Hi, everyone. So, welcome to our Login and Learn. Shadi, do you want me to share the slides that we have prepared?
Yeah, but whichever will work easier.
Okay. I mean, I can share it, no problem. Let me
Okay.
just share my screen. One second. Oh, sorry. I don't think I have access to share the screen. Do you mind if you share our slides?
Sure, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Sorry, can
Okay,
you see
yeah.
them? Okay.
Yes, we
Excellent.
can. Thank you so much.
Okay. Sorry about that. Oh. So whenever we're good to begin, just let me know and then we'll begin.
Sure, we can begin now.
Okay.
The rest of the people, if they're coming in, we'll just let them in as they come along.
Okay. Sounds good there.
Okay.
Sorry, just to introduce myself. I'm Shadi. So I'm
Mhm.
just an individual tax preparer. I've been doing taxes. This will be for 14 years now. I went to school for accounting. I worked for H&R Block for 8 tax seasons. And then eventually I ended up going on my own. I had many of my clients there, like they would push me over the years to go on my own. I was very hesitant as I'm not sure if I could do it, but it's turned out to work very well for me. And I
Mhm.
appreciate everything that you all have done for me as well too. You guys have been
Okay.
tremendous help.
Okay. Thank you so much. So just to start off our session, let me again welcome everybody to Master Our Taxes. So we're going to be receiving expert guidance from Shadi. Thank you so much for attending regarding our taxes, deductions, filing tips, and more for this upcoming tax season. So before we start your talk, Shadi, let me
Yeah,
call on Jenny to just lead
sure.
our prayer and then our territory acknowledgement.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Mm. Yeah, let's put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Heavenly Father, we come before you with grateful hearts as we gather for this tax education event. We thank you for the opportunity to learn, grow, and gain knowledge that will help us navigate our responsibilities with wisdom and integrity. Bless the students, organizers, and speakers with clarity, focus, and understanding. May this event be source of empowerment, equipping us to make informed decisions and contribute positively to our communities. Guide us to use the knowledge we gain responsibly and to approach our financial duties with honesty and diligence. May this time together foster collaboration, inspiration, and a spirit of service. We ask your blessings upon this event and all who are involved. May it be a success and a stepping stone toward brighter futures. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And before we begin, I would like to take a moment to honor the land on which we gather today. We acknowledge and respect the Lukanjan peoples on whose traditional territory the university stands, and the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wisanech peoples whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Now, before I hand it over to you, Shadi, I would just like to give a disclaimer.
Mhm.
So that would be our next slide, please. Thank you.
No worries.
So everybody, this presentation only gives a broad overview of the Canadian income tax system, as taxation of international students can be a complicated issue that varies depending on the circumstances of each individual. Okay, so Shadi, you may go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Hi everyone, how are you tonight? Well, as they mentioned, we're just going to give some ideas on taxes. What type of income we report. and then what deductions and credits are available to us. So, and determine residency status, it can also be difficult at times, depending if you're here for the full year or half the year. There can be different filing requirements as well too. Sorry, give me 1 second. So the next slide here will show the income tax rates for the current tax year. Then you can see we have a progressive tax system. Therefore, the more you make, the higher the percentages that you have to pay on. You can see the difference in the income rates between 2023 and then 2024. The rate itself is the same, but the thresholds, you can see they increase a little bit slightly each year. So the most common types of income that we have to report are employment income, including tips received. Generally, like the income would be reported on a T4 slip. We have self-employed income, including commission income, or if you're doing rideshare income with Uber or Lyft, as well as delivery services. So Skip the Dishes, Uber Eats, DoorDash, as well as Instacart. You may have some foreign employment income. If you're on unemployment, you'll have EI benefits, and then investment income, including interest, dividends, as well as some other foreign investments. So other types of income that we don't that I didn't necessarily list. We have income from social assistance, and then workers' compensation benefits. I think for NBC, I think you guys refer to it as WorkSafe. Because I'm in Ontario, we have a WSIB. So similar thing, just different name. So the income from those two, from the social assistance and the workers' comp, that income is non-taxable, but we just have to enter in for information purposes. It'll be used in the calculation when CRA they're calculating our benefits. So here are the most common types of expenses or deductions we can claim. The medical expenses, the most common ones are prescriptions, dental, glasses, chiropractor, and massage therapy. So also regarding the medical premiums, if you have a benefit plan through your employer, those amounts that you pay into the plan, they can also be deducted. Usually, most individuals, they don't explain this to you, or the employers don't explain it to you. Unfortunately, only very few employers actually include these amounts on our T4. If it is on our T4, it will be in box 85. Otherwise, you'd have to refer to your final pay stub of the year in order to see how much you put into the plan, the total amount overall. So there are like many different types of medical expenses. As I said, these are the most common ones. So the medical expenses, they vary for each province. So you can go onto CRA, and then they will have a list of medical expenses that are eligible for your province. So for individuals with kids, we have childcare expenses, daycare, summer camps, and babysitter. So the daycare, they'll usually issue you an invoice. Summer camps, you'll get the invoice as well too. But babysitters, when we claim that, it can be a little more difficult, because realistically, like what CRA, like what they would want the individual's name and their personal information as well too. Because if we're going to be claiming this as an expense, they're going to want the individual to claim it as income as well too. So unfortunately, it may be hard for you to make this claim. So you can try to make the claim, but if CRA will ask you for proof, it can be harder to prove because the babysitter may not be willing to give you their information. I recall, like in previous years, when I worked at Eastern Block, the babysitter would not give the individual their personal information, so they ended up putting me on the phone, giving me the contact, and they gave me the personal information themselves. So regarding tuition fees, your tuition from UVic will be used as credits. It'll be reported on your T2202. So other things that we can consider as tuition fees, if you're just taking, like, let's say an examination course, we would consider that either as tuition or as a professional fees, a union do. So regarding moving expenses, I've had individuals ask regarding moving expenses if they can claim their expenses, like their ticket when coming to Canada. Like they could, but it's also difficult at the same time as well too. CRA, they are highly likely to question us. So one of the things when we're claiming moving expenses, one thing we want is proof. CRA, they would want a letter from the employer, like a job offer letter. So unless you have that job offer letter before you arrive to Canada, we may not necessarily be able to claim for the expenses. Other things that they would ask for like the airfare ticket, or if you're driving, they'd want those expenses as well too. If you hire a mover, they would ask for that as well too, plus various others, but those are the main ones. So other deductions, we have a RRSP, Registered Retirement Savings Plan. So for individuals in the first year of entry, you can't contribute to the RSPs because the amount that we can put into this is based on the previous year's income. So since it's your first year of filing, you don't have any income from Canada the previous year. Therefore, you wouldn't be eligible to make any claim for it. Now, I have had some individuals who have contributed to RSPs in the first year, not being aware of it. See, it's okay, like because we carry it forward to the to subsequent years, but we have to be careful of this because CRA, they may be difficult. It may be considered an overpayment, and then they may charge individuals a penalty on this. So honestly, it's better that you not contribute in the first year and then just wait till your second year of filing. So we also have donations. I know a lot of individuals, so just like regular charitable donations, you can log on to CRA site. If you're unsure if it's a legitimate charity, they will have all the charities registered. So I know many individuals who they also go to church. Those donations are also considered, can be deducted. But I inquired with the client before. I remember last year I had an individual. They say that they did have church donations, but since they were not registered with the church did not issue them anything, any donation receipt. So if you do plan to donate to the church, it's best that you be registered with them in order to get that donation receipt. So the other thing too that I like about with donations, so with the donations, you get a credit of 20% on the first $200 in donations. After $200, you get a credit of 40% on any donations above that. So with donations, we can carry them forward for up to 5 years. So generally, I try to convince people to hold on to the donations, especially if it's a small amount. This way they can build up over the years and get a higher benefit out of it. So for individuals who are common law or married, it doesn't matter if the donation is in your name or your spouse's name. We generally always claim under one individual in order to get the highest benefit out of it. That would be a similar situation like with medical expenses. So just going back to the medical expenses, the amount that we can claim will depend on the income. So generally, like when I'm filing for individuals, I always tell them it's best if we see how much your income is first, and then I can tell you based on your total income, here's how much your medical expenses have to be in order for them to help you. In previous years, I'd have some clients who would especially seniors, when they bring in all their medical receipts, they get their prescriptions. You get that tiny receipt from the from the pharmacy. I usually have them bring in. I've had somebody bring in me a shoebox before. I'd have to go through all of them, and then unfortunately, it would not add up to any amount. So we were not able to use it, unfortunately. It's going on to the next one. 1 second. So as you can see here are just some types, of documents that you'll receive. You'll get the T4 from the employer. So for investments, you'll get a T3 or T5 from the bank or the institution. Any gifts you receive, you cannot claim it. So for the medical expenses, generally, we don't necessarily need the receipt right away. I would just need the amounts. And then if CRA does question us, then we would have to send in the proof. So same thing with the childcare expenses. I remember lately, a few years ago, CRA, sometimes they pick a certain thing to target, and then they request that proof. I think I had maybe close to 10 individuals where they requested proof from. So again, we'll just enter in the amounts, and then later on, if CRA, they'll send a letter, and then we have to send in a proof. The similar thing would go for the donations, and then with the tuition. So before 2019, the institutions, they were not required to send in the T2202 to CRA. Just T4s and other slips had to be sent into them. But starting in 2019, CRA required individuals, students to give their SIN number. This way they could also report the information to CRA themselves too. So other expenses, people also ask a lot, like groceries. Unfortunately, you cannot claim that. People also ask about laptops. You cannot claim that either. And vehicles, you can't claim that either, unfortunately. The only way that we can claim like those other things is if you're self-employed or if you're required to claim employment expenses. So employment expenses, let's say like you're in sales and you have to use your vehicle to visit clients, then we claim some expenses. Same thing if you have to buy the laptop for work, we claim a portion of it. And then similar thing if you need to work from home, then we'll claim some home office expenses. Most commonly, your rent, your internet, and your utilities. So here are key dates, key dates to be aware of. So starting this year, e-file will open for individuals on February 24th. They opened it earlier last year, but I can't really say what the delay is for them. So the final date to file will be April 30th, but if that falls on a holiday or weekend, it'll be the next business day. So regarding the final date, generally if you file late, it's not always a bad thing. As long as you don't owe money, they won't charge any penalty or interest. But if you do owe anything and you don't file on time, they will automatically charge you a penalty of 5% on the balance owing, and then they will charge individuals 1% per month. So I remember in previous years, I had one client where we filed multiple years at once. We had 2 years in a row where he was owing over $2,000 each year. So one year they charged him the late filing penalty of 5%. And then since there was multiple years in a row that were not filed on time, they charged him a penalty of 10%. And then I also remember another situation. There was somebody who forgot to include some of their income, which can happen. It's common to not receive T4 and forget about it. But if this happens multiple years in a row as well too, I've had CRA charge an omission penalty to the individual. They would charge them 30% of the balance owing. So it's very important that we try to file on time, but of course there's always some situations that arise. So the way individuals can file their taxes, we have a net file for individuals where they can file online. CRA will have a list of certified softwares that are certified for net file. There's also volunteer clinics in your community. You can go onto CRA site and they will show all the clinics available. Through an e-filer like myself, we will also do it online. And then finally, if you can't do it online, you may be forced to mail in the return. There are some situations where in the first year of filing, for new individuals, they can't necessarily file it electronically through NetFile. Through e-file, I'm still able to. Unless they give us an error, then they may force us to file the return. So generally, when we file online, the processing time for returns, it can be as quick as 1 to 2 weeks, or maybe 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the situation, how busy they are. For paper returns, it can be 4 to 6 weeks, but sometimes 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes even up to 8 weeks. I recall last year I had a few individuals where, again, CRA gave me errors. We weren't able to file the returns, but we had to mail it in, and unfortunately, it took even longer than 8 weeks. I remember some taking about 3 or 4 months. I also had some other individuals who we were able to file online, but CRA requested other information. I did have somebody wait. I'd had a few individuals actually wait more than 6 months. Well, like in that situation, I usually call CRA on the individual's behalf, but unfortunately, there's only so much information they can give us, or they can give to me. I'm usually a representative on the account, but they can only provide so much information to the representative themselves. The actual individual would have to call if a situation arises like that. So here's just a sample of what the T1 general of what it looks like. We have all our personal information on the first page. Here's the second page where it'll show all our income. We'll have the total income. On the other pages, then we'll see like some of the deductions that arise. We'll to arise to our net income, and then our taxable income to see the final amount that will be the final income that will be taxed on. And then the final page of the T1 will show the final result. So here's just a sample of a software you can use online. Well, simple. It's probably the most user-friendly. The other most user-friendly one for individuals would be TurboTax. Before I became an e-filer, I would use TurboTax. So with NetFile softwares, CRA limits to only 20 returns per household. I would file a lot more than that when I did the e-filing, so I had to use probably about 5 or 6 platforms, unfortunately, just to get all the returns done that I needed to complete. So we just have some general questions and answers.
Yeah, so these questions we got from people who registered via Google Forms.
So what documents should I ask for from my employer? Many individuals ask this. So you should not have to ask the T4 for the employer for the T4. They should issue it automatically. Now, usually they will issue it either by mail, email, or if you have an employee portal that you log into, you'll have to retrieve it there. So if you have more than one job, you will receive a T4 from each individual employer. So there are situations like where your address may change and you don't receive the T4. You can always contact CRA to get the information. But if it's your first time filing, unfortunately, they would not be able to give the information. So an individual like myself, an e-filer. So as I mentioned, I contact CRA on behalf of individuals. I have a forms for an individual to sign to authorize me as a representative, allowing me to contact CRA by phone, by mail, or by going online to CRA themselves and to retrieve the T4. Because our employers, not only do they have to submit the T4 to us, but they have to submit to CRA as well too. Because after the tax season, CRA, they'll have a matching program. They're going to want to see what we filed. They're going to match it to what they have on record. So what will happen, like in this situation, let's say your employer does not send the T4 into CRA. They will do they'll do a reassessment on the return. They will leave the income the same, but any amounts deducted on your T4, they will take it away until we provide the T4 itself. So I remember a few months ago, I had an individual who he had a reassessment back in 2015. The employer did not originally send in the T4. So I asked the individual if they still had it with them. They did have it with them. I was able to send it into CRA. They still allowed us to file the claim. And then they reversed it a balance owing on the account of about $3,000. So this helped the individual quite a bit. So many people ask this as well too. When you have more than one employer, it's highly likely that we're more likely to owe, because so when you work at one employer, you're working consistent hours, and then they're deducting the proper amount of tax based on the number of hours we're working. So when we enter, our employer, they enter the information into their payroll system, they're using government calculations. So they're deducting the proper amount based on the number of hours worked. But if you have multiple jobs where you're only working, let's say maybe 15 to 20 hours a week, based on the total hours and wages earned, they're not required to withhold any tax. So when we finally get all the T4s, the income, the total income, total tax withheld is inconsistent with each other. I recall in like a few years ago, well, more recently, I've had individuals with multiple T4s. I remember I had somebody with I think it was about 5 or 6 T4s. Unfortunately, they ended up owing around 4,000. Because on some of the T4s, the income wasn't too high. It was only maybe like $5,000 or $6,000. But because they weren't working a lot, there was zero tax withheld on these T4s. So I've had many individuals recently ask about this as well too, the TD1 form. So the TD1 form, most of our employers, they usually give this to us before we start work. This form will determine how much tax for them to withhold based on the credits that we were claiming. And there's also on the second page of it, there's also a box where you can put in an amount for additional tax withheld. So individuals usually ask me like what amount to put in. I can't really say an amount exactly. It all depends on your situation, on your income, and how much you can afford to like not see each paycheck. So also with the TD1 form, it'll ask about what credits we are claiming. There's multiple boxes, I think boxes 1 to 15. Generally, I always tell them to only fill out box 1, the basic personal amount, the income exemption. I have had some other individuals fill out other boxes. So for example, you're going to be claiming tuition. Individuals, they filled out the box that they're going to be claiming tuition. There was also other situations where their spouse wasn't working. So they filled in that they're going to be claiming an amount for their spouse. But so when doing this, if you fill in these other boxes other than box 1, the employer, they will withhold less tax at source or each paycheck because they know that you're going to be claiming some other credits when filing and that you won't necessarily have to owe money. But honestly, I recommend not to do this. I had somebody last year who filled in for the tuition. So they filled in that they're claiming tuition on the TD1 form. On their T4, they had zero tax withheld. The total income, I think, was around 50,000. But they had a large amount of the tuition. So therefore, the employer knew that they weren't going to be, really owing any tax because they had these credits. I also had somebody else too who they put in amount that they're claiming for their spouse. But unfortunately, this individual ended up owing because the spouse ended up going back to work at some point in the year. Therefore, they were not able to claim any benefit for their spouse. The spouse needed all their credits themselves. So again, it's always better just to fill in the first box because you don't know if your situation is going to change like throughout the year. Also, with the TD1, if you want, you can fill out a new one at any time during the year as well too. So as I was saying about the individual who had the tuition and the other individual with the spouse, I told them to submit a new TD1 right away. This way, they wouldn't have the same situation for the upcoming tax season. So I've had other individuals ask as well too about the BC renters credit. If they arrive at the end of the year, can they still claim it? Unfortunately, they cannot claim it if they arrive at the end of the year, since you have to be paying rent for a minimum of 6 months during the tax year itself. Any amounts paid in 2025 don't count, only the amounts for 2024. So what we also need when we claim rent, we need the amount itself. We need the name of the landlord or property management company. We need the address it's for, and we need the number of months you lived at the address. So if you did live at multiple addresses during the year, we have to list the information for each one. So reasons for us to file a tax return. So number one, if we're expecting a refund, of course, we need to file just to get that refund back. But most importantly, I feel it's most important to file if you are owing money, again, because of the penalties and the interest. So many people will say to me that they didn't file because they were concerned about owing money and not being able to pay it. But if you can't pay it right away, that's fine. You can contact CRA to work out a payment plan with them. They're very easy to work with. But it's always best for us to file on time just to avoid those penalties and interest. So again, if the balance owing is outstanding still after April 30th, they will charge the interest, which is just a small amount, but we still avoid those penalties. So a second reason for us to file taxes will be to apply for benefits. Even if you have no income, you still have to file in order to be eligible for the benefits. So I had many individuals contact recently who arrived in December of 2023. So they didn't originally file because they were told either because they didn't know that they had to because they weren't working or weren't attending school, or they were told they did inquire, but they were told by the individual that because they didn't have income, they can't file. But again, so even if you entered in December of like for this year for 2024, and for January intake, we still file because you're eligible for benefits starting from January of the following year. And as well too, so regarding individuals who are in school, if you're just in school and not working, we still have to file to ensure those tuition credits are on file with CRA, because it won't be beneficial to you in that year. But in following years, when you start to work more, then you'll be able to use those credits. So I had some individuals who were going to school for anywhere from like 5 to 10 years. I remember I had someone in law school. They were working very little in those years, so therefore they didn't need the credits themselves. Sorry, at the time. So when they finished school and they finally start to work more, those credits were building up. We used them all at once, and they had a refund of about $7,000 to $8,000. So also with tuition, if you, the individual student, if you don't need the tuition at the time, again, it'll carry forward automatically, or you have the option to transfer it to a spouse, a parent, or grandparent. Now, in the first year of filing, I wouldn't transfer the tuition to a spouse if you don't need it, because CRA it'll delay the filing. They will ask for other information, so it could delay the filing by maybe a month to 2 months or so. And then I've had other situations where, regarding tuition transfer, I've had situations where the parents will be filing for the kids, and then they will transfer the tuition automatically to themselves. Like, yes, the parent is one paying it in those situations, but at the end of the day, the tuition is in the student's name, so it's up to them whether they want to actually transfer or not. So when it comes to transferring tuition on your T2202, you have the first page where it shows the tuition information itself, and then on the second page is the transfer designation sheet. So if CRA is to question us if we are going to transfer it, you have to put in the amount of tuition that you're transferring to the other individual, the federal amount, the provincial amount, and then you have to put in the individual's name and their relation to you. And then you, the student, you'll have to sign off on that. Because if CRA, if they are going to ask for proof, they're going to want to see that form as well too. So just give me 1 second. So
Okay.
was there any other like information that individuals that they were looking for?
We do have some questions from the chat. We
Sure.
will be sharing our own slides.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know. Oh, Lane,
thanks,
okay.
Char. I'll take over the screen sharing from here, Shadi.
Okay.
I have a deck of more questions.
Okay.
Some of these might have already been covered earlier during your discussion, but
Yep.
I'll put them up anyway in case you want to add anything or highlight some key
Sure.
points. So just give me a minute here.
No worries.
Thank you. Hi, Char, if you don't mind reading them.
Okay, sure. So, for our first question, it's how to file. Oh, is this a question from the chat? What are the documents needed
These
to
are some
file?
questions from the pre-registered participants.
I
So
see.
most of these things actually have been discussed earlier, so it's okay to skip them.
Mhm.
Just making sure that we have covered all the questions from them.
Okay, I think we can do this. Is there a DIY guide we can find online for straightforward tax filing, especially for students who don't have complicated multiple income? So like students who only have one source of income.
So they can go online to CRA. They'll have information there. And as well too, if you are filing on your own with a NetFile software, they should have a guide as well too. Usually they have like for example, I used to use TurboTax. They would have, let's say, easy step method.
Mhm.
So it would say, like, they would ask for your personal information, and then they would ask you, did you work during the year? You'll click yes. They'll ask which forms do you have. Were you in school during the year? You'll click yes. You'll click what forms you have, and then it'll ask you other questions. It'll ask you the medical expenses, donations, and other things like that if you have them. And then it'll follow you step by step on how to fill it in.
Okay, so for first-time filers, do you actually recommend that they do it themselves or they do it through tax preparers yourself, such as yourself?
Well, either way, it can be, they can do it themselves, but it's also beneficial to go through someone like myself as well too, especially for the first year of filing, because there's more information that we have to provide to CRA afterwards. So, for example, I'd have a lot of individuals ask me, so regarding the world income, individuals they ask me, why do I have to provide my income when I wasn't in Canada at the time? So in the first year of filing, we have to provide our world income because CRA, they use this information to determine certain credits on the tax return and as well too for benefits purposes.
Okay.
So if you're regarding the world income, so generally we have to provide the income from the before entering Canada for the year of entry, also from the previous year. And if you enter it at the beginning of the year, early in January, February, or March, then you have to provide the income from the previous 2 years in order for CRA to calculate our benefits. A lot of times I usually call, like, on behalf of these people. I think last year I probably called CRA on behalf of around 300 individuals to provide the information for them.
Okay, I think we can go to the next question. Oh, is there recommended software that you would, recommend students or first-time filers to use for tax filing
For me, it would be Simple or TurboTax.
or TurboTax?
Those are the
Oh,
two that I used before I started registered as an e-filer
mm,
and then use different software. There's also the software I use is Studio Tax. I think they charge their fees usually cheaper than most. I think it's maybe $15 or $20.
okay.
The-
Okay, and then what factors can help us reduce our tax burden?
So again, medical expenses, they will help. The donations will help. The tuition will help a lot. But I just want to say, like, regarding the tuition as well too, many individuals, they automatically assume that they're going to get money back because they paid like a lot of tuition. So I know how much the fees are for international students compared to regular individuals. But again, that's not always the case. It's also based on our total income, the total tax withheld, and the credits already available to us. So other things, sorry, that if you have union dues, that will be on the T4. Now you may pay separate professional dues or like membership dues. Those will also be claimed. And then as well too, if you have investments, if you're paying like an advisor, then we will claim the fees as well too that you pay to offset the investments.
Okay, so our next question. Our donations. Okay, I think this was
Yeah,
already
we pretty much touched
covered.
on
Yeah,
this one.
this was covered. Prescription glasses. I think
Yeah,
it's
this
also
one too.
covered. Yeah. Can I include filing my tuition fee from UVic when I paid it last 2023?
Oh, so for the tuition, if you paid and attended UVic in 2023, again, if you don't need it, the tuition will carry forward automatically, allowing us to use it in the following years. But another thing about the tuition, so individuals, if you enter it at the end of the year for like January intake, many individuals that they think they can claim the tuition because because they paid it in the previous year, but it goes by when we attended, not when we actually paid.
Okay.
Hi, Shadi. Just to clarify and
Yeah.
just to add on that question,
Yeah.
if they are going to avail services from you, would you be able to advise them whether to apply their tuition fee, which they paid from 2023 to 2024, this time when they file their taxes for 2024, or will that be able, or can they carry that forward to the next year when we anticipate that we have more work hours, hence more income? Since for now we're working 24 hours, so we might be needing those deductions later on as compared to this year. Am I making sense?
No, you are. No, so in that situation, because I've had individuals say that too. They say I've had some individuals say to me, "It's like, well, I want to use my tuition to get the highest refund."
Mhm.
But with the tuition, we don't necessarily have a choice if we want to use it or carry forward. If we need to use it to reduce our income or any amounts that we have to pay, then we use it automatically. Otherwise, it'll automatically carry forward, or we can choose to transfer it to the other individual.
Perfect. Thank you.
See, because that's also that's also a misconception individuals have. They assume because they paid a lot of tuition, they think that they're going to get like the money back almost dollar for dollar, but it
Mhm.
doesn't work that way. It's called like a non-refundable credit. So non-refundable credits, they multiply it by the tax rates, by the federal rate of 15%, the lowest rate, and then the lowest provincial rate about 5% and change. So we only really get back 20% of the amount that we actually paid.
Mhm. Yeah, perfect. This was a similar question, right, Char? So we move
It is
on.
a good question, yeah.
Have we touched in this one too?
This is so they arrived in August 2024. My OWP started working in September 2024, but the student has not yet started working. Do they still need to file this tax season? I think the OWP does. Does the student have to file something too?
Well, yeah, that they will both file.
Mhm.
Again, even if the student, even if they're not working, we still file because they have tuition, and then they have to file to have the tuition on record. And then, so especially for for couples, it's best if we file for both of you at the same time. This way, we can ensure that if there are any amounts we can transfer from one to the other, that it'll happen at that time. And then as well too, it's best if we file on time, as well too for the benefits purposes. So in regarding like for the couples filing together at the same time, I've had people ask like, well, I don't want to file with my spouse. I want to file separately. So there is a return incentive for each individual. We just enter in the information at the same time just to ensure that we are claiming the proper amounts. Because let's say you are filing, sorry, on your own at the time without your spouse, it'll ask you to enter information for your spouse. It'll also like just their personal information and their income. So there's been situations where people would do that, and then for their spouse, they won't put the income in for them. Therefore, the software will transfer amounts from your spouse over to yourself, but you're not entitled to those amounts because the spouse had income themselves and they need it. So later on, when CR when they do the auditing later in the year, they would send them a reassessment letter, and then some individuals they'd have to pay back about $2,000 to $3,000. So that's why it's always best. I had other situations with some of my clients here in Ontario where the spouses didn't file at once. So I did some adjustments for one spouse. I found them about $400, and then for the other spouse, I was able to find them $1,500.
Okay, thank you. So in this case, this person had 4 T4s from September until December 2024, and he or she made minimum salaries.
the income threshold 705, what is the amount this year? Now, technically, in the year of entry, since you weren't here for the full year, you're not entitled to that full credit. You're only entitled to a partial amount based on the number of days you were here. It'll be prorated by that. Unless your income, your total income between the world income, sorry, between before you entered and in Canada, if 90% of it is from Canadian sources, then you'd be entitled to the full basic personal amount. But we can't say for sure until we see the total income, the credits available, and the total tax deducted.
Okay, that's understandable. Okay. Why does having multiple jobs result in tax owing? I think we touched on this earlier, but would you like to add anything?
So as mentioned before, like multiple T4s, it results in tax owing more likely because when you're not working consistent hours at one place, they're not withholding tax at a consistent rate. Whereas if you're working, let's say 35 to 40 hours at one job, it's consistent hours, therefore the tax withheld is consistent. Because technically our employer, they will deduct enough so that we technically break even. We should realistically owe or get back a small amount within even like a few dollars or like $100.
Okay. Do you have any advice for people with 2 or more jobs to lower? So this is related to the previous question. Just any advice to lower their tax owed during the tax season for people with multiple jobs?
So again, the best way will be for individuals to fill out the TD1 form and then to request the extra tax withheld. But at the same time, so honestly, owing money, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Realistically, it's actually better if we do owe money. Because if we get money back, that just means we're paying too much tax throughout the year. We're better off to essentially put the money aside ourselves, maybe invest it a little, get a little bit of interest, get a little bit of dividends. And then when it comes time to file, we have the money aside in case we do have to pay the government. As for me being self-employed, I know automatically I'm always going to owe. That's just the situation when you're self-employed.
Oh.
Because you don't have any tax withheld at source, so you automatically have to keep the money aside yourself.
I see. Okay. Next question. To avoid a balance due to the CRA, you should complete TD1 forms to request additional tax deductions or I think this is the answer to the previous question, was it?
Yeah, it'll be similar.
Yeah. Okay, so this is definitely from the chat tonight. So they're asking if MSP, which is $75 monthly, is that claimable as medical expenses?
Unfortunately not. Honestly, I thought it was previously, but I had to look that up and it wasn't. I thought it'd be considered similar to like when we paid to the benefit plan at work, the premiums, but it's separately. Unfortunately, you cannot claim this amount.
I see.
So like because I'm in Ontario, so for myself, we don't have anything like that for a monthly amount. On when we file on the provincial forms ourselves, if our income is over a certain amount, then we have to pay into OHIP, the Ontario Health Insurance Program. So it'll vary for each province how it works.
All right. Our next question is EI and WCB income difference. The reason they're asking is because they're unemployed and they received a WCB benefit, but no EI benefit.
Oh yeah, so with the EI, again, if you lose your job or any of that reason, then you apply for EI because if we pay into this, the amount we pay into it, it'll be on our T4s and box 18. So EI is taxable, whereas the WSB is not taxable. WSB, it's more if you get hurt at work and then you can't work for that reason. So workers' compensation.
All right. Okay. So is CELPIP registration fee claimable?
Oh, so like for school or
For English exams? I think this is for English exams, or probably if they're studying for CELPIP or they're studying an English course.
see, you can also claim tuition not reported on like a T2202. We could possibly claim it. Usually the amount has to be at least $100 in order for us to claim.
Okay, but if it's just because there are exams, right? So if it's like a CELPIP or an IELTS registration fee for the exam, do you think that's claimable?
No, I wouldn't necessarily see that be able to claim as well. I couldn't see that one.
Okay. Okay. Let's go to the next question, please. Okay, can we also claim for working clothes or shoes and tools needed for work?
So, and unfortunately, nothing like that. So there's an amount that they give us on the tax return credit, the Canada employment amount.
Mhm.
The amount I think this year is around like 1,600. So again, it's it's a non-refundable credit. Therefore, it's multiplied by the federal rate of 15%. So it would be about $240. But regarding tools, if you're a tradesperson, then
Mhm.
you may be able to make a claim for tools. But you need a form from the employer they would have to sign it, say yes, you did have to buy tools for the job. They would also have to list which tools that you had to buy. Otherwise, in an individual, they could buy multiple things that aren't necessarily related to the employment. And then if CRA questions us, they're going to want to see the receipts and that form.
Okay. Regarding donations, which we touched on during your talk earlier, I received only the payment receipts. Do they need any additional proof for their tax applications, or the receipts are sufficient?
No, the receipt is fine. Like the charity, they should normally email you or mail you a donation receipt.
Okay. Would we be able to download the T4 from our CRA account? I think this was touched on before as well. If you're a first-time filer, if I remember correctly, you won't be able to download the T4, right? But if it's not your first time, then it'll be available there.
Exactly. If you have my account set up, so if it's the first time, you can't do it because in order to set up my account, you have to have filed at least one tax return. But again, if an individual like myself is filing on behalf of you, I will gain access to the account by having you sign a form, and then I'll be able to get any T4s that you didn't receive.
Okay. All right. So if we lived in one house for 6 months and another house for the next 6 months, is rent claimable for both?
Well, yeah. So with the rent, the maximum benefit an individual can receive is $400. So it doesn't matter how much the total amount paid is. You would receive only 400 at most either way. So with the rent the rent credit, the
Mhm.
max is 400 up to income of 63,000. It'll be reduced for income between 63 and 83,000. And then if total income is over 83,000, then no amount could be claimed.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now, this is also related to the previous question. Now, if they're a group sharing rent for one house, can each of us claim a portion of the rent on our taxes?
Yep, so you each can claim the amount paid, but if if they are to request any proof, you would each have to send in the proof. So sometimes, like let's say there's four of you, and then only one individual is on the lease, and then like the other three, they're giving the money to the one individual. So if CRA was to ask us for proof, the other three would have a hard time like being able to provide it.
Okay. Okay. Do I need to declare my spouse and child in tax filing even though they are not here in Canada?
So regarding the kids, you won't declare the kids, but the spouse, technically, you do have to declare the spouse even though they're not here. If you are common law or married, we will have to enter in some information for the spouse. And then as well too, regarding for benefits purposes, the individual will have to contact CRA to provide the income of the spouse in the years needed.
Okay, so this is quite a lengthy question. If they were self-employed at one point and earned just 150 for the whole stint, are there any other tax forms that they should file besides the T2125? If I want to claim, yeah, I think that's the question.
So sorry, they only earned $150 or like a small
Yeah,
amount?
for the whole, probably a short self-employed
Oh, okay.
stint or something.
Yeah, so like in a situation like that, I probably claim it as like on another line as other employment income, like line 104, because line 101 of the tax return is employment income. Line 104 is other employment income. That's like not necessarily reported on a slip. So there's also situations where like depending how the income is reported, it'll automatically consider an individual self-employed. So the most common thing is you might receive a T4A, a T4A slip. This type of income that's reported on there is pension income, annuity income. If you receive a scholarship, that's also reported, and then other employment income. So the most common one that people will receive is a T4A, box 48, fees for services. The way this income is reported, it automatically considers you self-employed for tax purposes. So unfortunately, like the individual, their employer doesn't necessarily explain this to them, how it has to be reported. But honestly, the reason that the employer does this is so that the employer themselves can save money. So as employees, whatever we pay into like CPP, which is box 16 on our T4, and then EI box 18 on the T4, they have to match it. So for the CPP, the employer has to match whatever we put in. And for box 18, the EI, the employer has to pay 1.4 times. Now, for self-employed individuals, the CPP is mandatory, but the EI is not. So therefore, with the CPP, whatever amount that we normally pay as employees, we have to pay double the amount as a self-employed individual, and then we get a deduction for part of it on a separate line of the return. But this is also another reason why a lot of individuals that are self-employed, they owe. Sometimes the CPP that we have to pay into it, so that we have to pay, is higher than the federal and provincial tax combined. So sometimes we may reduce the income enough so that there's no federal tax or provincial tax, but we still have to pay into that CPP, which I find is the biggest burden for tax individuals. For self-employed individuals.
Okay, so I think this is another question related to the first question that you just answered. So if they want to claim self-employment expenses, but they lost the original receipts, can they still claim them if they have photocopies of the receipts or maybe soft copy, scanned copies and stuff?
But that should be fine because we're still able to provide the information. So sorry, for self-employed individuals, sorry about that, just readjusting. For self-employed individuals, the most common thing that we claim will be vehicle expenses. So including your gas, your license of registration, your maintenance and repairs. Oh,
Did he just got disconnected?
I think so.
I'm gonna send him a chat and make sure
Okay.
any technical glitches addressed.
Sure.
Can you just hold on? Yeah, he just ran out of power. He's plugging in
Maybe
his
just for
device
1 hour.
and he'll be back in a couple of minutes. In the meantime, if we have additional questions, just type it in the chat. And I think we have a couple more minutes with Shadi to respond to some questions.
Yes, as much as we'd like Shadi to answer all of your questions, I think we only have time for maybe one or two, maybe three more.
He's back.
I think Shadi is in the meeting room.
No, I already approved that. I had him.
Okay, thank you.
sorry guys.
Oh.
Sorry, the laptop died on me.
No,
I just had to plug it in. Sorry about that.
No worries, Shadi.
No
Sorry.
problem.
So we were talking about the self-employed expenses. I was saying about the
Yeah.
vehicle expenses.
Mhm.
Again, the expenses that we'll claim are the gas, the license or registration, maintenance, repairs, and insurance. But most importantly, regarding the vehicle expenses, it's not just like let's say receipts for expenses themselves that we need, but if CRA is to question us, we need a logbook. So what they would want, they want you to take down your odometer reading on January 1st and December 31st. This way we can see the total number of kilometers you drove overall for the years.
Mhm.
And then they want you to keep track of the kilometers related to business. So in that situation, like what I usually suggest to individuals, if they just go to Google Maps and like log in, just put in from point A to point B, this way they can see the total kilometers driven, like for that for that trip itself, and then have each one like that. For
Okay.
individuals doing like Uber or Lyft or one of the delivery apps, Uber and Lyft, they'll send you the summary, and then it'll show your on-trip mileage. But you still need to have your odometer reading, so we know how many kilometers you drove overall for the year, and then we can get our ratio for the expense claim.
Okay. So for the receipts, just to circle back to the question, it doesn't matter if they have the original receipts as long as they have a record of the receipts and then some other supporting documents, that would be fine.
Generally, it's good enough. I've had individuals like in other years where we'd have to send in bank statements where we highlighted like each expense.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
it can also depend on like when we send it in. It can also depend on whoever at CRA is reviewing it, how difficult they want to be as well too.
Okay. All right. I know we have a couple more questions, but I think we're just gonna do two, maybe three more before
That's
we
fine.
We still
Whatever
have
you have.
two. Last
two
two
more.
questions.
Last
Yeah.
two? Okay, so last two questions, as Arvin was saying. Okay, so next question then. If the employee has worked for a company for 3 months and then another 3 months for probably another company, and finally a third company for 6 months, do each of the company he worked for need to provide T4? I think this was answered. Yes, right? They all have to
Yeah.
provide T4s.
Each one will issue you a T4.
Right, but now this person's question is, what if the past employer is not cooperative? What if they're not providing T4s?
Well, so situations like that do happen. So, but again, as long as they do submit it to CRA, like if I'm filing for the individual, I'll be able to get it from CRA once the employer submits it. So there's other situations as well too. Let's say the employer is not issuing the T4 to you. If you have like a pay stub, a final pay stub of the year to show, or of your employment. If you have the final pay stub to show the total income and amounts deducted, in situations where CRA, when they request documents from us, if you can't get the physical T4, then they would ask for something like that as proof instead.
All right, let's go to the next question, please. Okay, for our last question, what proof can we provide if our landlord doesn't issue a rental receipt? Would an e-transfer be considered valid?
No, unfortunately, something like an e-transfer or like a cancel check, that would not be valid. Because like what they really do want, they want a letter from the landlord with all the information. So like it would have to say, have to say like the individual lived at this address.
Mm-hmm.
They paid they paid this much in rent for this period of time, and then it would have to be signed off by the landlord as well too.
Okay. Does that have to be notarized or anything, or it just has to come from the landlord?
Just from the landlord.
Just from the
That's it.
landlord. Okay. All right. I think that was our last question. Although I do have one just off the top of my head.
Sure.
If you're a casual worker, like you work maybe 8 hours, let's say for the university,
Mhm.
part-time, because sometimes they need people for convocation and stuff. So if you work casual hours, 8 hours only, do you think, do they provide T4s for that?
Even if you just work one day, they would still have to provide a T4.
Okay. Okay.
Because
So
like I've seen individuals like that, they'll say I have this T4 from this company. There's only a small amount of income on it. I only
Okay.
work for like 2 or 3 days, and then either they were let go or they didn't like the job, so they just left.
Okay,
You'll see
so
situations like that.
regardless of the amount of time, the employer should provide you with T4.
Yeah, even if the income like let's say it's only $100 or less, they should still issue a T4.
Okay, okay. Thank you for that. So I think
No.
that's all the time that we have tonight. Thank you everybody for coming in and sending your questions, and of course,
Char,
thank you. Yes.
we need to plug also the contact for
Oh,
Shadi.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
before that, Shadi, if you're comfortable sharing how much your rates
Oh
are,
yeah.
if you want to avail
Yeah.
your services,
Actually, I'm
what's the
going to
best
ask
way to
that.
contact you?
So like my rates to file, it'll be $40. Unless an individual like is self-employed, then the rate it'll be higher. Again, just because it's more complex return. So if they have the self-employed income, then as mentioned, even if they're with Uber, Lyft, or one of the delivery apps, it would still be considered self-employed income.
So that's 40 per individual. So if
Yep.
a family is availing your services, that's going to be twice.
Yeah, like for husband and wife, it'll be still
Husband and
40
wife,
each.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
See,
you, Shadi.
individuals,
And what's the best way to contact you? Is it through email, or do you want to give your contact number?
also a lot of individuals like they usually contact me first. I've through Facebook, through Messenger.
Okay.
Either way, because I'm sure I'm friends with at least one of you, and you'll be able to get my contact from one or the other. But can I put it in the can I put it in the chat? My contact
Yes,
info?
please. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, just give me 1 second.
Can you next slide, please?
Yeah. So I'm sure our Arvin, our UPC chairperson, has something to say to Shadi, and also some
Yeah.
reminders and events to look forward to.
Next slide,
But this
please.
was another question. Okay.
Yeah, okay. On behalf of UPC family, we would like to thank Shadi Dada for taking the time to share his expertise on this topic. Shadi has been an invaluable source of information, especially since it's tax season now. Don't forget to support him as he has been our generous sponsor for the past years and continue to be so. So it's easy
You all have been
to,
valuable to me too.
yeah, it's easy to contact Shadi. So just message him in Facebook. And then he also has, I think, group chat in Messenger. Just message us and then we can add you also on that group chat. So what's next on UPC? We would like to invite everyone to our next login and learn session featuring how to become a registered engineer in BC. So this session will be especially helpful for engineers from the Philippines or other countries who are looking to practice here. And we also have a post Valentine event. This is open for everyone on the 21st at Vertigo, the sub Unit Ubic. We will be playing a Filipino version of Squid Game, and we hope to see you all there. And additionally, we will be launching our new program called Lunch and Learn, focusing on financial literacy and express entry as the pilot topic for those who need to know how to file their permanent residency. This is a free event which with lunch provided. The speaker will be an immigration lawyer and there are limited slots available. So, and we also have the sports fest soon.